All right, welcome to part the third of Auth. So let's recap. So we know how to create users. Most of it is just regular old Rails CRUD stuff. We install bcrypt, make a route to handle the user, make a controller to handle the user, and then we use has secure password and password digest. That makes a new user. When we want to verify that somebody is who they say they are, we have them send their request to a login route. We have an action to handle that request. We look up the user. If the user doesn't exist, they didn't give us a good username. We call that .authenticate method. That's part of the magic that we got with bcrypt. That's going to tell us whether or not a password hash matches the hash that we have stored. Then, if all of that checks out, then we create a token with Jot, we sign it, we send it back. So what we're going to talk about today is, all right, so a client has a token, client sends us a token. How do we verify that the token is good? And then how do we use that to say something like, all right, anybody can list dogs, but to create a dog, you have to be logged in. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Questions before we get started?
That authenticate, that's what rehashes the password they plug into Rigid.
Correct. Because remember, the hash that you have, it's not just a matter of like, I bcryptify like my password and take that hash. Because remember, there's parts of that hash that have meta information about it, like the version of the hashing algorithm, and it has the salt as part of it also. So rather than manually split all that shit out and handle it all ourselves, we get that authenticate method that does all of that for us. Other questions about these first three parts, or first two parts, or what we're doing today? All right, step one today is we're going to do these two things. You're going to do all the stuff from part one and all the stuff from part two. So let's put, I'm going to put 10 minutes on the clock for that. Give it your best shot. We'll go through it all together also. 10 minutes, go.
Do you need a secret, or is it just like extra?
You need one. That's what signs it. Otherwise, somebody can tamper with your jot, and you wouldn't have any way of knowing. Another 3 minutes. All right, that's time. So let's walk through this together. If I'm going to, let's see, I'll go take my some auth project 4 from yesterday. Yep. There, come on. Some auth project 4. There we go. All right, so this is a fresh Rails app. First thing I got to do, install bcrypt. So I go over to this, uncomment it out, bundle install. Slick. Create a route to create a user. So go into the router, resources, users, only create. Done. Create a controller to create a user. Rails G controller users. Head over to that controller. Make a user. And then send it back. Done. Create a user model with a secure password. Has secure password. I'll head over to the migration, tell it that we're looking for something called a username and something called password digest. Has secure passwords, turn in password into password digest. The digest is our hash. Cool. So then I run the migration. And now I should be able to run this server and create a user. See how right I am. All right, so go over to my users thing, making username and password there. Send it over. Hey, there's my fresh user. Cool. So, second part, I'm creating a login route. So I'm going to say something like any post request to login should go to authentication controllers login action. Cool. So I need to make a login controller in action. Can do. Rails G controller authentication. It is so. Go over to my authentication controller. Make a login action. Whereupon I will look up a user. So I'll say user.findBy username, and we'll grab params username. If and only if that user does not exist, then I want to render some kind of error. So I'll say render JSON error bad username, status of unauthorized.
What's the difference between saying error and message?
Like, they're just names I made up. I can call this E, call the other one M. I call both of them message. Kind of a useful convention, because if you think about a front end fetching this, one of the things they can check for, in addition to like the 401 status, is it can go, if there's something on this response called error, then I want to go through this branch of logic and print that to the user and like whatever else. If there's not something called error, then check to see if there's something called message. And if there's something called message, then I want to do that. But no, they're just labels I made up. Cool, so I've looked up the user. Next step, I want to authenticate them. So I can say, if I call this authenticate method on user with the password that they gave me, that's their plain text password, then that's a bad password. If neither of those things are true, that means that it's a good username and a good password. So I can make a payload, put something in there. User ID is a real handy one. I can have some secret. And now I need to make a token, sign it, send it. So to make a token, I have to have the JOT library. So I go over here, down at the bottom, gem, JWT, done. Now, you need a bundle install anytime we add a new package, so we do that. If I was running my server, I would also need to stop my server and restart it. You also need to do that when you add gems. But now I can say the token is jwt.encode the payload with the secret. And I send it on back. Cool. So now if somebody sends me their username and password, I should be able to fire off a token back to them. So let's prove it. All right, I've made this user. So I should just be able to change this to login, send over the same username and password. Oop, I gotta run the server though. I get back a token. Huzzah! And that takes us to the end of step 2. Questions so far?
Real quick, where would you be plugging that in on the JOT site to like prove it?
So if I wanted to see what was in this token, I could take this over here. I can go over to JWT.io. I can look at my encoded thing, and hey, what do you know? There's the contents of my token. Oh, check that out. So this signature is also base 64 encoded. And so when I first did that, it's like, yo, signature doesn't match. Somebody tamper with this token. Woo, woo, woo. I go, it's all good, baby. It's base 64 encoded. Other questions so far?
So I get everywhere up to the jot part. Like I get like a 500 error.
Okay.
I'm not sure why. It's saying unexpected identifier token.
Ooh, interesting. So compare yours to mine.
Okay.
Did you do at token, perhaps? Or token is a symbol?
It looks the same. Let me try again. I like created didn't have one, so let's try this again. No.
Right. So go ahead and screen share. Let's take a look.
Okay. Where did you go? My word, where did the Zoom go? Let me find it. Sorry, once you stopped sharing, I like lost you.
Should be a green button down at the bottom.
Okay. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so this is what it looks like.
All right. So an authentication controller's login action, you're getting the user. If the user doesn't exist, if we can't authenticate the user, otherwise we make a payload, we get the secret, we encode the payload with the secret. By the way, the thing that Naya is doing here, that's the auto-generated one, so you don't have to make one up. It's rails.application.secretKeybase. You can just use that as your secret. So at the end of your closing curly brace for like token, you need a comma.
Oh, damn. Okay. Let's see here. Ah, perfect.
Very nice.
I would have never found that.
Cool. So let's talk about how we would protect a resource. So let me show you something. I'm going to make a new resource. We do dogs. Why not? We'll say anybody can list dogs. Only people who are logged in can create dogs. So I'm going to make a controller for dogs. I'm going to make a model for a dog. And also, I'm going to make a commit right here. All right, so if I go to my router, resources, dogs, only index, and create. So first thing to do is exactly what we would normally do. I'm going to make migration, done. I'm going to make, go over to that dogs controller, make methods for index and create. Index is going to get all the dogs and just fire them on back. Render JSON dogs. Over here, we'll say dog.create. crate, ha! And take whatever name that they give us. And fire it back. Awesome. Nothing too crazy there. Run the migration. Cool. I'm also going to, while I'm at it, make another commit here. So I should be able to run this right now and see my no dogs that I have. Should also be able to make them. So I should be able to get dogs. Cool, there's my no dogs. If I make a post request to dogs and send over name Bixby, cool, made my dog. Put Mesa in there. All right, doing good so far. And there's my dogs. All right, cool. Now I want to protect that second action, so you have to be logged in to do it. So first thing we need to do is, if they didn't try to send us the token, then we can just end the conversation right there. So that token normally comes in what's called an authorization header. It's just one of the headers that you send over. So if I want to get that header, I would say something like request, which is sort of like params, but it's an object containing all the shit about the HTTP request. The request.headers authorization. Cool. That should give us the contents of the authorization header. If they didn't give us one, then we're done. If the token, if that thing is there, then we need to pull the token out of it. So here's how these tokens usually come over. It's not just the token in the authorization header. It also has the word bearer in front of it. So we were looking at Heroku yesterday. There we go. And every time I was doing something on here, they were, let's see, can I get in this one? Perfect. Hey, look at that. Token. Hey, there's my token. And then if I try to do something on here, like go over to this, let's take a look at that GET request, and we'll take a look at the headers. Hey, Kyle, what headers did you send over? Oh, just that. So it's the authorization header, but you see it has the word bearer in front of it. We need to account for that in Rails. So we'll say that the token is something like header.split. So we'll split on the space, and then we want the first part of it. We can just say dot first. So that's going to make an array of strings that splits on that space. And we want, sorry, we want the second one. So if we did that, header.split on the space and get the first index, that would give us the token back. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to decode that token. So we encoded it in our authorization controller. We're going to decode it when we want to use it. And it works kind of the same sort of way. We need the secret. And we're just doing the whole thing backwards. So we say the payload is jwt.decode the token with the secret. And don't ask me why, but it comes back as an array, and so you have to get the first one out of it, and that'll give you the payload. And now we can do whatever we want with that payload. So that payload has a user ID. Cool. We can use that user ID to look up the user that made this request. So we could say something like @user is user.find payload user ID. Or is it a symbol? It might be a symbol. Yeah, it's a symbol. So I can get that logged in user. I can then go, hey, is that user even allowed to do this? I can do all kinds of stuff now that I have my logged in user. And assuming all that checked out, then I can do something like, all right, go ahead and create the dog and send it back. That's it. So let's see if it worked. Still should be able to get a list of dogs. Very nice. If I try to make a dog without sending that header over, I'm not handling the error right now, so it should just explode my server. Oh, well, or give me that error. So cool, no token present. Meanwhile, if I log in, send my username and password, I get this token back. I can take that token and if I'm trying to make the dog here, in Postman, you can go over to the authorization tab and say bearer token, and then just paste it in here. Now let's see what happens. Couldn't find the user without an ID. Oops. Got through. All right, somebody didn't like in that payload. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a bybug here. Let's try that again. Cool. So what is in my payload right now? It is a string. Man, I thought it was a string. All right. All right, try that again. So now, if I send my token over and try to make a dog, hey, I'm allowed to make a dog. If I get rid of my token, womp womp. Ask me some questions about what you behold on your screen. All right, one more thing that makes this a little bit more durable. So if the token is bad, if somebody tampered with it, right now it just explodes my server. For example, I put my token back, and I just throw 5 X's at the end. Invalid token, I tampered with it. Right now, it just blows up because the signature doesn't match. So what I want to do instead is like explicitly handle that. And so the way that you do it, you might have seen this in a Learn Lab somewhere. It's with begin and rescue. So we try to do all of that, and we rescue if it explodes. And we're going to rescue by saying something like bad token. Begin and rescue are exactly like try and catch. Ruby just uses different words for everything. And so they call it begin and rescue, but it's try and catch. We're going to try to do this. If any one of those operations throws an error, then we're going to assume that the token's fucked up. Cool. So now, actually, I'm going to throw these in there too. Throw the whole thing in. So now if I do that same thing, if I mess with the token and try to send it over, now it just tells me I have a bad token.
As it's written, will that rescue like any error and tell us it's a bad token?
Correct.
Okay. So if we screwed up something else, we'd have to use a bot
Right.
to figure it out. Okay.
Correct. So yeah, if like they put too many spaces or something in their thing, the token might be fine. They just formatted the request wrong. But yeah, the error would come back as bad token. One more thing we can do to make this more robust. So you saw in Naya's code that instead of just making up some string, you could say rails.secrets.secret keybase, and that just gives us a secret we can use. Now, worth mentioning that since the token I'm using right now was signed with the other one, the signatures aren't going to match until I get a new token. That kind of makes sense, right? So if I do that and use my good token, it's going to tell me I have a bad token. So I got to log in again. Oops, secrets. I thought that's what it was called.
It's application.
Ah, Rails application. Thank you. All right, now I get a good token. I can use it to make dogs. Ah! Ah! Why won't it let me make dogs? All right. Got you. I got you. Ooh, let's see why it says that. I wonder if it's so it's something in here throwing an error. Up to us to figure out where. So I wonder if it's that secret. So I'm going to throw a buy bug in there.
Change that one from secrets to application in the dogs controller.
Oh, thank you. You're beautiful. Now if I Rails S and try to make a dog, there's my button. Phew. All right, but we're not ready to drop the mic yet. There's one last thing we got to do. So let's say I also want to protect updating a dog, or I want to protect deleting a dog. That would probably look something like def destroy, and we look up a dog that we're given with dog find params ID, and then we do something like dog.destroy, and then we do something like render JSON, just render status. Render status, is it no content? How do you do a 204? Rails 204. They got a symbol for no content? Yep, that's exactly what it is. Cool. But if I want to protect this, but I'm doing all of this bullshit too. All that, and then I go, okay, well, the actual work that's happening is that. So I'll take that and just move it over here. What's the problem with that?
Just repeating yourself.
I'm repeating myself. If I did something like that Rails.secrets to Rails.applications again, no, I got to do it in 2 places. Yeesh, that's not good. So how do we handle repetition in programming?
Break it out into its own function, modulize it.
So I could say something like authenticate. I'll make a method called authenticate. And now I can take all of that logic, just take the whole thing, throw it in there, take out the parts that are going to be specific to each route. Too far. There we go. Okay, now I have this authenticate method. That's cool. So I shouldn't need to do any of that stuff. This should go back to looking kind of like it normally does. Same with this one. All right, so I have all that repeated logic in there. It's pretty good. But now the problem is, if I have a cats controller, if I have a owner's controller, if I have all these things, now I need to copy and paste that authenticate method all over the GD place. And as a setup for our paradigms chat, how do we handle that in object-oriented programming?
We put it in the parent class, the
We
application
put it
controller.
in the parent class. We put it in application controller. All of the controllers eventually inherit from application controller. So anything that we put inside of application controller is available in every controller. Okay, that's pretty cool. So now what I do is use a pretty cool macro in Rails called for action. And we can say that I want this method to run before every action. And then I can narrow that down to create and destroy. See if it works. All right, so can I still make dogs? I can still make dogs. What if I have a bad token? Not if I have a bad token. What if I want to delete? Oops, I don't have a route handler for that right now. What if I want to get the dogs and I'm logged in? Cool, that works. What if I want to get the dogs, but I'm not logged in? Also works. We have protected a resource with tokens. Here's the other cool thing about doing it this way. I don't know if you noticed I used local variables for these, but I used the instance variable for that. What that means is over here in the dogs controller, anything that's doing that authentication, I could do something like if @user is allowed to create dogs or whatever method you want to make there. And so now you can restrict who is and isn't allowed to do certain things once you know who they are. But I just get @user available because that method ran first and saved it on the instance of the controller. But yeah, I just have an @user available in any authenticated method that lets me access whoever had that token. Pretty sick. Ask me some questions.
So in the next part, do we cover like keeping track of this token on the front end? How does this work?
There's no official part 4 to this. The unofficial part 4 is, yeah, that.
Okay.
But there's way less to it than honestly any of these things. You keep track of your token in local storage and you send it in the authorization header with every fetch you make. Ta-da, that's it.
So basically, no matter what, like whenever you log in, you parse the response and save it to some variable, and you pass that variable in the header.
Yep.
For every request. Okay.
Correct. So yeah, the JS part of this would look something like I make a fetch to login. And then actually, yeah. So that's what logging in looks like on the front end. The reason you put in local storage, not just some random variable, is local storage is like variables that will survive a refresh. So if you refresh, you navigate to a different page, something like that. Local storage is variables that will live past that. Logging out is just taking your token out of local storage. And then when I want to make a dog, I do something like cool. That's how you do something you need to be logged in to do.
And if you don't have a token, would that throw an error in your code or just?
Yep. Well, it would throw an error in your response. Those are those errors that we wrote. I do this, the token's bad, it poops back unauthorized bad token. And so then I have something, some handler for that, like this. Or you could have it redirect to the login page. So you could do something like window.location.href equals login. Now you've redirected the user to login. Other questions? Cool. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll talk about paradigms. I'm going to leave the Zoom room open if anyone wants to hang out.